me? You're already dead.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. My name is Jordan, and with me today, the warrior of the wasteland, the Manada from Canada, the Ayatollah of rock and roller. It's Kumar.
Yeah, that was Mad Max. That was not Fist of the North Star. This week,
but there's a connection.
Yes. Well, I don't know if connection is the word.
Direct inspiration.
Yeah, Mad Max 1990, Mad Max, Fist of the North Star 1995. So, we recorded an episode of Deconstructing Comics about the comics. I think almost exactly a year ago, August of last year, when this podcast was still nascent. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to run the audio from that podcast, originally produced by Tim Young for Deconstructing Comics. I slightly re-edited it. If you've heard it already, you can skip ahead about 55 minutes from this point. Or
listen to it again.
Listen to it again, because it's much like reading Fist of the North Star, it's repetitive. So you can just listen to it again anyway. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the movie. Okay, so we're here to talk about Fist of the North Star. I can't believe we're really doing this. Okay, so somehow I thought that you knew about Fist of the North Star, but actually, 5 minutes ago I learned you know nothing about Fist.
What I know about Fist of the North Star is the famous meme, you are already dead.
Yeah, okay.
What? And that it's a big thing. 1980s. When I was at school, it was one of the animes that the weird anime nerd knew about and watched, although I never got around to watching it. Okay. So I've just got this peripheral awareness of Fist of the North Star.
Well, I don't really have that much awareness of it myself. I mean, I knew about it somehow. Maybe there was a...
Well, there's a mobile game, I believe.
Well, yes, there's that. That's much later. But initially, I think in the 80s, there might have been a Nintendo game that actually made it to North America. I feel like I'd heard about it somehow. I watched the anime movie, which famously was like all blurred out, like all the violence was pixelated.
Right.
So I had seen that, and maybe I'd read a few chapters. There used to be a magazine that came out in Japan that was like bilingual, and it had some comics. I think it was called Raijin, and it had some chapters of Fist of the North Star in there. Maybe I read a few of those, and that was kind of it. I've been playing this mobile game for some reason. I was like, okay, Fist of the North Star, I'll play that. I don't know what my logic was behind choosing that game. So I feel like I know it, but actually I don't know it that well.
Right.
And I don't know that there's that much to know about it in a sense, because I kind of went in thinking, okay, this is going to be a bit like... Because I see all these characters in this video game that I play on my phone every day, over and over again. I'm like, okay, these are all the recurring characters. That are just like, this is the Joker, your Penguin, your Riddler, who's the villain going to be this time? That's not how Fist of the North Star works. The bad guy shows up, he kills them, he explodes them. There's no, somehow they're going to come back later. It's like they're dead. Yeah,
no one's coming back in these first 4 volumes. So let me get this straight, Kumar. This is the first time you've read Fist of the North Star, this reading.
Yeah, so this reading, yeah. So what happened was, so there were, I think there's 27 volumes in Japan, so that's 200-page volumes. That's the complete series. Started around 1983.
Yep.
And now Viz has started re-releasing it after a very long time. I think maybe with a new translation, I'm not really sure about that point. But they're releasing them in deluxe volumes of 300 pages. And there have been, I think, 4 of those so far. So we read 4 for today.
Got it.
There might be a 5th or 6th out at this stage, I'm not sure. But they are re-releasing those in these. So I guess there would be, what's the math on that? 20 volumes instead of 27 if they're doing 300 pages each?
Sounds plausible.
Yeah, okay, so Fist of the North Star, well, I was thinking how we're going to describe this, but actually I have my action figure here that I've had since I lived in Japan, and I'll just read the description off the action figure.
Perfect introduction.
Now, this is a Japanese action figure with English text on it, and none of the English text is really, it's not good.
I think perhaps it'll effectively capture some of the insanity of this book.
Oh, yeah. Okay, 1990X. Nuclear war broke out. The sea was gone, and a great scar was left on Earth. All life form has disappeared. No, not all. Human hasn't exterminated yet. The war has destroyed the civilization. Now, the world is a chaos ruled by violence and terror.
Perfect.
Okay, so Fist of the North Star is about this guy. So, you never even have to say it's about a guy. So it's really, okay, it was written by Buronson, a guy named Buronson. It's a pseudonym.
Is this another guy named after Charles Bronson?
He is named after Charles Bronson.
Another one.
Many years ago, I translated a couple of books by him, but drawn by Kenta Miura, who drew Berserk. Okay, so it came out in the 80s. Bronson was supposed to sound like Bronson. It's a heavily influenced. Tetsuo Hara is the artist.
Are we talking about Fist of the North Star again?
Fist of the North Star. You can even see. Okay, so it's this guy Kenshiro is the hero. He's basically Mad Max.
Yeah, 100%.
100% Mad Max. Dresses like Mad Max.
He looks like Bruce Lee.
Poses like Bruce Lee. Looks like Sylvester Stallone. You can go online and see like all the swipes, like the art swipes, like where they've actually frame for frame lifted like Stallone or Bruce Lee or this guy or that guy and see who they've modeled Kenshiro after. Anyway, Kenshiro is the master of this martial art called Hokuto Shinken, the Fist of the North Star, and he basically wanders the wasteland. Now, wherever the Hokuto Shinken, wherever a user appears, it's like bad luck, like bad shit's gonna happen.
Yes.
So he basically has to keep wandering because he knows trouble will follow him.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
But at the point where we enter the story in Volume 1, he kind of picks up a few hangers-on that become regulars in the story, two little kids. Basically, Rin is the girl. What was the kid's? I can't remember now.
Is it Bat?
Bat, yes, Bat. And then basically what happens is every few chapters... Okay, so...
I've actually...
Okay, go
I don't know if this is the right time, but I've written out a step-by-step guide to what I call a classic Kenshiro adventure.
Okay, but first we have to... So, before we describe the adventure, we have to describe... One of the reasons the adventures happen the way they do is that the way Hokuto Shinken works, the main effect of it is, I don't know if I should say the main effect, you hit certain pressure points. This is a Chinese martial art that's 1800 years old, and there's only one user at any time. There's only one inheritor of the art.
Yes.
And how it works is you hit certain pressure points, and basically it causes people to explode from the inside. A few seconds later, or minutes later, however long he decides.
It's totally under the control of
He can hit this guy right there, and the guy will die 3 days later.
Yep.
Or it will be
3 seconds
three seconds later, and just enough time to say...
Or his arms will fall off.
You are already dead.
His head will blow up.
Oh yeah, or whatever he chooses. Somehow, we could go into all the... Let's go back and try to enumerate all the powers of Hokuto Shinken, because there's a lot.
He just pulls them out of the air. I mean...
Yeah, let's go into that, because it's worse than... like Silver Age Superman comics, where suddenly he would have super ventriloquism this issue.
Absolutely.
Or super hypnotism out of nowhere. He would just suddenly have this rando power. And that kind of, I guess it kind of crystallized, or it solidified into a certain set of powers in the late 60s or in the 70s for Superman. But with Kenshiro, you never know what he's going to do with these powers. So, like in one... He makes some people lose their memories. Like they find water in this village. It's like, I'm going to make these guys forget that they found the water so they won't bother the village. Yep. I'm like, you could have solved many of these conflicts if you'd use this power every other time. He can sometimes hit them in a way that it like paralyzes their certain muscles, not every muscle.
He robs a bully of his arm strength, leaves him just enough to work, but not enough to bully.
Right.
That's a very precise measurement. Sometimes he assumes control over their movements.
Yep. Oh, yeah. He can, almost puppet control them, make them shoot themselves or stab themselves by poking them in a certain way. And later on, it gets to the point where we don't even see him do the attack. Like, the enemy will run past him, and then later it was like, he's like, what? I feel weird. What's going on? Why can't I move my arm? It's like, Kenshiro moved so fast that they didn't even draw a panel of him moving. It was so fast that it couldn't be seen, and he actually tapped the guy right at that specific point.
Kenshiro will then turn his back on the guy and address the fourth wall, essentially, and say, I have paralyzed your such and so point.
Yeah.
In 3 seconds, your feet will fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, like...
And the guy will go, no, save me!
Oh, yeah, or sometimes, like, I couldn't even... Like, I have notes, but my notes are so meaningless. Like, they're, like...
You've written down the names of all of his powers and what they do, but it's like you said, he's like Silver Age Superman. He has a power for every situation.
It's
like
some
in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where Yugi will believe in the heart of the cards and draw the card which solves the precise situation that he's in.
Right. Also, but it's
also an episodic... written.
Well, there's a tradition going back here. So another thing is the naming of the moves.
Yeah.
So you got to name your move when you do it. And it's got some weirdo name.
Yep.
And then he'll say the name of it. They usually translate it transcribe it from Japanese. They don't translate it.
No.
Oh, they do.
Sometimes.
Yeah. He'll say like it's blah 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 blah. It means the flying swallow backspin. Sorrow or...
This is hilarious, incidentally. Like, because the word balloons, they don't have the little sticky outy bit to show who's talking. I can't tell whether people are excitedly yelling about their powers or if it's just meant to be a descriptor of what's occurring in the scene. I prefer to believe he's excitedly yelling about his powers.
So every fight manga, every combat battle manga does this.
Yeah.
It goes back to before Fist of the North Star. I don't know where it started. It might go back to actual Japanese martial arts where they actually have names for every thing. This is the despair.
Oh yeah,
fist.
It's a characteristic of
turn,
like wuxia as well, Chinese martial arts novels.
Yeah, so he always names he always tells you what he's done after he's done it. Actually, in other manga,
he doesn't just tell you what he's done.
Because in other manga they usually name it while they're doing it.
Right.
They're like jumping at the guy and they're saying what they're doing.
Sometimes it seems sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't, and other people do it as well. The wasteland is littered with astonishing martial arts in a way that the present doesn't appear to be. In a way that I
really wondered what the hell was going on.
This is lunacy.
So when it starts out, like he's just this dude in a wasteland, we get no backstory. It's not until volume 4 that we learn more about how the apocalypse happened.
Oh yeah, we don't learn anything.
Because I'm like, did this happen 100 years ago or 200 years ago? And then volume 3, this guy shows up who's a world championship boxer, and I'm like, okay, wait a second.
Yeah, he was a champion
world
boxer.
Championships, that has to be.
Well, he said he used to be one. Was that before the apocalypse or after?
Yeah, how can it be after? So it has to be. So that means the apocalypse had to have happened in our lifetimes. It doesn't seem.
And there are enormous prisons everywhere.
There are still prisons with prisoners in them. I'm like, okay. So
prisoners are all master martial artists.
Later, we do learn that it did happen in.
I haven't got to that point. It's not in the.
It is in volume 4 because we see the scene where like Toki and Yuri are running away,
right?
And he like shoves it. We see a big nuclear explosion. It
happened like last year or something.
Yeah, it's very nuclear holocaust kind of. Yeah, they're not kids; they're grown up.
Current adults.
So he's gone through all his training, and there's only room for 2 more people left in the shelter. And Kenshiro's quote unquote brother shoves him and his girlfriend Yuria into the shelter
his fellow
so
acolyte.
That he can die from the fallout. 2 weeks later, they come out of there, and he's still alive, hanging around outside.
But he's weakened. Anyway, we've jumped way ahead.
Yes, have we though? I really don't know.
Well, where to start? Well, I mean, because
you just start. He's wandering around in the wasteland. And, okay, so what I was saying was, in order to understand the stories, you need to understand that he uses this art of exploding people from the inside, and it's really super gory, gushy every time it happens. It's like heads fly off, and then there's like a geyser of blood out of whatever holes, or their heads split open 10 different ways. He has one move called called bone ejection something. Maybe I even wrote it. Bone purging strike. Yeah. And he hits the guy, and then maybe, I don't remember if it was how long afterwards, his bones like fly out of his body. It's real Hellraiser kind of stuff. It's so over the top.
Funny.
And also, there's one move where Ray who uses like the Southern Star martial arts, actually uses his clothes. He moves to like slice Mamiya's clothes off.
Oh, that was
Yeah, which is I don't. And I was
going to come to that a little later.
As I was thinking about this, so like I can't remember what his motivation. It wasn't.
She wanted to fight. It was a little.
He was trying to make her feel her femininity, or she was like, I'm never going to get married again. I want to be a fighter. So, I don't know.
It was kind of an unsavory scene. She wanted to fight with the men, and to prove that she couldn't fight with the men, he ripped her top off. And when she moved to cover herself, he said, "There you go. You want to cover your nakedness, so that means you're not fit to fight." She should have pulled his pants off and seen what he did.
Well, yes. Well, okay, so Kenshiro always, at the start of every fight, flexes and his shirt rips off.
This is astonishing. Where's he getting all his shirts from?
Yeah.
In the wasteland.
Also, where does he... It's like the old Incredible Hulk cartoon, because as soon as the fight's over, his shirt is back. And there's even in the middle of the fight...
He found a stash of jackets.
There's one fight where one of the enemies has these, like, maybe it was boomerang blades or something, and slices both of Kenshiro's calves. And Kenshiro kind of cries out in agony, but then he does this like super mega flip through midair. This is literally like the next page. He's like flipping through the air, like 10 feet in the air, lands and kills the guy. Yeah. And he's not bleeding. The bleeding never lasts for more than the panel in which you see it. Yeah. Then you don't even see the wounds after that. Yeah. And also his pants are not ripped anymore on the next page. Yeah. And it was just consistently...
Hokuto Shinken is capable of so many amazing feats. Clothing regeneration seems like...
You're right, because they can use it for healing, so maybe he just heals himself.
He heals his clothing.
But he never bleeds out. Like, nobody bleeds out. Your head explodes and you die, and that's it. But if you get cut, that's fine, because you won't be bleeding afterwards.
Speaking of the... Yeah.
Okay, go through the adventure.
Okay, alright. So I've written my classic Kenshiro adventure, subtitle, Where He Goes, Chaos Follows, which is a line from the very first volume. Alright, so step 1, some innocents somewhere are suffering at the hands of enormous bandits.
Yes.
If something's up with the scale of people in this as well.
So they're the bandits are always super cruel. The bad guys are always really cruel. One guy, they're hanging this guy, and he's standing on the shoulders of his, like, 2-year-old kid. So the kid is the only thing that's keeping him alive. Yeah. It's consistently like this, and it's just... and
people will grow up people in front of their children.
Right. Okay, so...
Yeah, just endless cruelty. And it seems the crueler you are, the bigger you grow.
Yeah, okay, so the size thing is... So sometimes it's like... Because I was thinking also there's certain characters the way, like in Crying Freeman, sometimes people are just gigantic, but they're consistently gigantic. Yeah. In Fist of the North Star, sometimes people will be drawn 12 feet tall. Yeah. And then the next panel, they'll be just for one panel. And I'm not sure if it's like for metaphorical effect or literally. It can't be literal because they're not the same size. They're only that size once. There's only one guy. They break into this jail and there's this huge guy in there who's like 30 feet tall. Yeah. They don't...
He's enormous. He can pick you up in his hand. Like his hand is as big as a person.
Well, lots of them can pick up, especially pick up like women in their hand, and they're it's literally like King Kong.
It's really odd. Anyway, all right, we'll come back to the enormous people. My theory is that villainy is like protein, and you...
Well, okay, so this is another... let's have another digression. I immediately, as soon as I opened the first 5 pages in, I'm like, where's all the protein coming from? And I thought the same thing when I watched Terminator Genesis, when the Kyle Reese in that one was he that Australian actor? Really... like jacked. This guy was huge, and I'm like, didn't you come from a wasteland? Yeah. Like,
where is all the protein coming from? Yeah. Everyone in this book is enormous. Yeah. Not just enormous, but ripped. Like everyone is.
Oh yeah, and he can. It seems like
muscle.
Kenshiro can like make himself bigger with Hokuto Shinken sometimes, like when he super flexes.
That's the least peculiar of his many powers.
So
all right. So here's the scene.
Cruel bandits. Okay.
Yeah. So there will be some innocent suffering. Okay. Bandits, usually but not always, 12 feet tall. Then Kenshiro will arrive, and the innocents will beg him for help. At that point, Kenshiro will either crack his knuckles or rip all his clothing off, or both.
Okay. Okay.
The bandits will laugh.
Yes.
Kenshiro will then invent an absurd martial arts move and announce it excitedly.
Okay.
He'll turn his back on his opponent while they explode from said martial arts move. Yep. The bandits will then run off, the remaining bandits, and the innocents will thank Kenshiro. He will leave at that point. Then the bandits will come back and murder everyone. Yep. And then Kenshiro will shed manly tears. Yeah. And he will return in turn and murder them all as well, leaving behind a field of corpses And then leather jacket magically regenerated. He'll continue on his adventures.
Yeah, and sometimes his attack will he'll slice off 3 heads in a row. And we also get to the thing is, because it's a pressure point, sometimes so later on we do get some kind of, not recurring characters, but more major villains. Like Jagi, one of his brothers.
I feel like that seems like the meta plot, and it was just kicking off in Volume 4, wasn't it? So the first 3 volumes, we essentially get Kenshiro wandering around doing these. Yeah. There's something with his fiancée, because he's very brooding.
Okay, so Yuria, so...
He's a bit like if Bruce Lee and Heathcliff had a baby. He's very Byronic. He's brooding and self-destructive and...
Okay, this is actually one of my notes, my note is, and none of my notes make sense, but my note is, what is the appeal of the stoicism? So, but what I meant by that was, Kenshiro never shows any emotion, except for the manly tears. And I love the chapter titles, because the chapter titles always have an exclamation point, and it's always like, the men who shed manly tears, exclamation point, or something.
I have another gimmick.
Okay.
So, as well as my list of how an adventure goes, I've got melodramatic titles, a list.
Yeah.
So this as well will give you a sense of the book, right? So in Volume 1, the very first chapter of the very first volume is called A Cry from the Heart.
Okay.
No exclamation mark.
Okay.
In Volume 2, we have Tears That Break Ambition. Chapter 20 is Rage! 2 exclamation marks. To the ends of hell! 2 exclamation marks.
Wait, was that 2 chapters or 1?
That's 1 chapter.
Rage to the ends of hell.
Each with 2
broken up with exclamation marks. Okay.
Then the best one. Chapter 28, Men Who Have Seen Tears!
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And the cover art for that one is even better, because Kenshiro is ripping off his jacket under that title. So it's almost like Men Who Have Seen Tears!
Oh my god, I never even thought of that.
Men have seen a lot of tears. Another one, there's Time Limit of Death.
Okay.
Evil Glare! 1 exclamation mark. The Blood of Formidable Friends! Exclamation mark. Power Game of Death, Beneath a Tragic Star, 1 exclamation mark. And the bizarrest title, 2 Malefics.
Yes.
I thought malefic was an adjective, not a noun, but that's okay.
Okay, so this is so 2 points about this. So one is the stoicism, which will lead to my point. So my point about this is somehow this was appealing to readers. Japanese school kids, for some reason, are reading this, and I'm guessing the reaction is, I wish I could feel as little as Kenshiro does.
But as much. Why do people...
But not show
it, right.
Or...
Because... It's like Lord Byron learned martial arts.
Yes.
And wandered the wasteland.
Yes, and he's mourning for Yuria, who killed her... Well, I have there's some serious spoilers about that you don't want to know about. But...
What? Is Mamiya Yuria?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Mamiya looks like Yuria, which is just
exactly like
that's a trope that shows up in anime and mangas, where he meets another woman that looks like the dead girlfriend. Okay. That comes up sometimes.
That's where I thought that was going.
But I'm just like, what? So he doesn't really... We don't see... He has... Okay, so let me say he feels, but he has no facial expressions. No. He's just stone-faced.
Except when he sheds manly tears. Well, he sheds manly tears.
But then you don't see a quivering lip or anything. No. It's just like the tear rolling down his face.
He doesn't... his lips don't turn down. He doesn't... Yeah. His brow doesn't furrow.
So I'm kind of like, well, why? It's really... The other thing I want to say about this series, which I should have said right at the top, is this is one of the early imports into the U.S., and you can totally see why, because it's kind of an anti-manga. It doesn't look like any other manga. It's drawn in a kind of a westernized style. It doesn't have the quote-unquote, the... Anime eyes? The anime eyes. It doesn't have that. It looks squinting, it maybe looks a bit realistic more than that other stuff. It never gets really cartoony or anything like that.
Depends also whether you think giant men are
Sure, well, the huge muscles, it's a very American, that's a very superhero comic thing. So it was easy to see why this got imported over other manga. It was one of the first few to, the first handful that made it over. You could see why the publisher would be like, well, we can sell this one because it kind of looks like
a comic book.
What we've already got.
Comic book, right.
But the other thing is also anti-manga, in that any other manga I read like a baseball manga or anything is so emotional, and it's so full of feeling and heart, and people are just pouring out their feelings onto the page, and like they're of joy or sadness or anger or whatever. It's just all right there. This is none of that is in here. It's just like one of the things you missed in your summaries was that all the villains, no matter how different they always grovel at the end.
Yes,
they've got a few minutes to live.
I forgot about the groveling.
They like beg for their lives. No, I didn't mean it. I won't do it again. You can save me, right? And it's like, no, it's too late for you. Also, he kind of gives another Americanism. He kind of gives weak one-liners. So it's almost like it's a bit like Samurai Cop, where that movie where like he had a foreign producer, like he was Dutch or something. He's like, I want to make American action movie, and he makes what he thinks is an American action movie, and it's like all the cliches packed in there in the worst, like most hilarious, laughable way.
The shock horror. The guy named Buronson is fond of
like,
one-liners.
Yeah. But sometimes it's like sometimes he forgets to put them in, and except for the most famous one, Omae Mo Shinderu, you are already dead, which is one of the most famous lines in any manga or anime anywhere.
I would say it's along with, like konnichiwa, it's the one Japanese sentence everybody knows.
Yeah. It's like, except for that one, which really is a great line in either language. The others are like, hey, was that supposed to be a one-liner?
Yeah, he said in chapter 11 he says, "That all you got?" When some big guy punches him.
Sometimes he's very casual, but the translation the translator's forced to do a very casual translation because that's what Buronson wrote in there, but it's not consistent with his personality.
Yeah, it's odd because he's supposed to be stoic. Yeah.
He doesn't really take any pleasure from this killing, or that he would make a sarcastic remark after he kills him. But all of this leads into the thing about it is it's so single-minded in its purpose. Like, it never wavers from Kenshiro is this righteous dude who's actually like, there's no conflict, there's no in his mind, there's no doubts about what he's
doing. Oh, good point.
Like,
he doesn't.
Good guys, bad guys, those guys are bad guys, they're being mean to people. He explodes them. And it's and as you like the plot, the way you were describing the chapters, this is what it is, and we're not gonna vary from that. The thing about it is
he's tortured, but not with self-doubt. You're right. It's more external, isn't it? His fiancée has been kidnapped. He drags suffering in his wake because of the malefic influence of his martial art.
Yeah. He's a tragic hero, I guess. It's like he hasn't done anything wrong. It's only other people that have done things wrong. Yeah. And he's stuck having to kill them because of it. Yeah. But he doesn't feel remorse like I wish they could have been better people.
No, he just slaughters them.
He just explodes them.
Yeah. He only sheds tears for the innocent.
Yeah.
Which he does constantly.
You do see a plot start to kind of form around Volume 4, so 1,200 pages into it.
I was a little disappointed when I got to the end of Volume 4 because I was starting to
get into the rhythm.
I was starting to get into the rhythm of it, and I was starting to wonder what happened next. Will he find Toki, his brother-in-arms?
Yeah.
Will we solve the mystery? What about the third brother that we've heard mention of that I haven't seen yet?
Yeah.
I'm actually... Whereas the first few volumes, I was a little bored, as I said, because he goes through the motions, especially once his fiancée apparently dies, though maybe not, you said, and he defeats his arch rival quite early on. I think in Volume 1, he's the head of the cards, or the hearts?
The hearts? Were they? Yeah. Yeah, anyway, they're all card themed, like spades and hearts and diamonds.
Yes, and then he just sort of... It's very episodic. He wanders around, he invents a power.
Oh, it was King Shin. Shin was the one that...
Shin. Yeah, that's the one. Who practiced the alternative, the mirror image of martial art. Yeah. And, I thought, perhaps this at the time was really... Here's what I was saying to myself. Perhaps this seemed interesting at the time, but to me, you can see that there's Mad Max. One guy on one of the covers looks like Lord Humongous from The Road Warrior.
Yeah, yeah.
He never shows up in the book, but he's there on the cover.
Yeah.
But Fist of the North Star is this phenomenon, apparently. That's all I know. I know it's a phenomenon. I'm peripherally aware that it's a big deal in Japan.
Yeah.
And I was reading it thinking, well, I don't get it. But to come back to my point, as Volume 4 started to get started, I started to become invested in the plot.
I kind of an opposite reaction. No, I'm not opposite.
Good.
I found every chapter I was in disbelief about the way that he exploded the guy or made them explode themselves, or the formula is repetitive. And so much Japanese art is a haiku where you've got the number of syllables and you have to fill it in, and it has to be about nature.
Yeah.
So they all look and sound the same or something. You know what I mean? And I feel like these were haikus, and we just had to fill in the pattern. But I was just in disbelief about the crazy stuff that happened to every one of these storylines. Like, I'm just trying to find...
Okay, that's great. I, on the other hand, I've actually written... It bugged me that no one commented on why anyone was so big. Like, were they mutants?
Okay, sure.
You know, so you can see
are they
some general thoughts. Why are there giants? Question mark in
never
my notes.
answered.
Goofy poking powers? Question mark.
Well, the poking powers, this is funny, because when we get to two pressure point fighters, there's hilarious sequences where you've got two guys pointing at each other, and it's like supposed to be a dramatic moment, but it's like, hey, they're both pointing at each other, like, and there's like these waves of hostile energy that are drawn, like, it's like radiating off of them.
It's like whenever a Chinese film or series tries to animate one of those chi battles where people grapple with chi with one another. It's always, especially when they got made, I watched a few of them made in the 80s, they're just sort of like goofy 80s special effects bouncing off one another.
Okay, anyway. hang on. I'm going to mention some things that that kept me reading in disbelief. So, for example, there's a scene with this villain called Fox, and he kills some people, or something, I don't remember, casually. Everything, it's always casual. And then he decides he needs to go take a leak. So he finds this guy that's like destitute, lying on the ground next to a wall, and he decides to piss on the guy's head. Suddenly a hand crashes through the wall, Kenshiro's hand, and grabs Fox's head and pulls it through. Like, every moment of this, I'm like, wait, he's pissing on this guy's head, and then a hand slams through, and that's the end of the chapter. And then you have the next chapter, and he's pulled his head through. There's the point where there's the prison called Villainy, I think, and
everywhere's a prison. There are no cities, just prisons.
One of the bad guys is trying to get in the prison.
Who runs these prisons?
One of the guards swallows the key, and it's like, uh-oh, and then he just explodes the guy. And takes the key.
I'm so thrilled that you enjoyed it, but I mean, maybe I'm just getting old and cynical, but I just found it really goofy.
It's super goofy. I mean, okay, so there's another bit where why did I write down the spinning axes? Kenshiro kicks these axes or pinning. There's one worse where Kenshiro is fighting Mandara, who's this kind of monster. It's like a werewolf-looking guy.
Is that the enormous guy, the biggest guy?
No. He's he looks like a werewolf. He's all hairy.
And
he knocks out one of his fangs, and the fang flies out to the Fang Clan chieftain, who catches it in his teeth and then crushes it in his teeth.
Yeah, exactly. What's my problem? Why aren't I enjoying this more? I'm just an old cynic.
Well,
why aren't I enjoying the over-the-top spectacularness of it? No, I know what you mean. Because that's the same guy where one of their martial arts is to hide a tiny man inside a big man.
Oh my god! No, but it wasn't even okay. So thank you for bringing this one up. Thank you. So this guy's martial art was they cut the guy open. I think it was the Fang Clan chieftain.
Yeah.
And there's a little guy inside, like a little dwarf that's living in him that pops out.
Not just one, there's many.
It's like all of them.
There's many. Everyone that looked like a regular guy had a tiny guy inside.
They're just walking around like regular people. They're not like rubber suits.
No.
They're wearing people outside of them.
It just didn't make a lick of sense. You know, right when it's like Buronson decided, okay, and then these guys that last chapter were the regular members of the Wolf Clan, now they're going to be meat mechs and all their little pilots are going to jump out.
Yeah. There was. I think I wrote more notes about that.
I couldn't handle it. It was just too much. I couldn't handle it.
I wrote, why did that guy's head explode on page 200? It says, at one stage, a bunch of gangsters show up at, like, this tavern, and one of their heads explodes. And then you see Kenshiro standing up on, like, a rooftop nearby. But they never explain why that guy's head exploded. Like, because sometimes they can hit the air in such a way that the vibrations will hit the pressure. So maybe he did it, but it's never explained. The guy just walking around, head just... Okay, so what I was trying to get at was, I think, we're 36 minutes into it.
Okay.
I actually think this is awesome. And I think it can be awesome either as, I think you could read it, even if you thought it was the worst thing in the world, which it maybe is.
I don't think that. Certainly not.
You could totally... You read it and have such a good time. Like, you could read it ironically and have the greatest time reading it. And it's like Samurai Cop like that. Like, I can't believe how bad this is. Every choice is a wrong mistake. I can't believe they're sticking with it. It's so single-minded. It's like, we're sticking to our guns. This is awesome, and obviously it was a huge hit, and the kids are reacting to it. And at the same time, I think that single-mindedness is the word admirable? It's like, it's so impressive. The belief in what they're doing I can feel it.
Right.
I can feel I don't feel anything cynical about it. Like, I don't feel like they were like, let's just rip off Mad Max and Rocky and Cobra. Cobra's a big, that poster with Stallone holding the laser with the sunglasses, all that kind of stuff. It's not like, let's just do some. These kids are stupid. Let's do
earnest.
This.
Right.
It's not not like the kids are dumb. We'll just make a dumb comic for them. I think they were really like, this is a dramatic story about strong feelings and about doing the right thing and defeating evil and all that kind of stuff. And wouldn't it be awesome if there was a martial arts that was so awesome that you could just like poke the guy here and then his arms would fly off and there would be gushing blood.
They really do. Their arms just fly off.
And they're like, yeah, this is awesome. And I feel like the creators felt like it was as awesome as the kids reading it felt like. And that's why I think either way, unless you're a person who, like, I wouldn't give it to my mom. Like, if you're a person who can't enjoy a thing ironically and laugh at the hilariousness of guys' heads, or sometimes they have a huge hole in their gut and they're still talking for 3 panels before they fall over. That kind of stuff. If you can't appreciate that on one level or the other, maybe if you're in that middle road where you just think it's dumb and you can't laugh at that dumbness, I can totally see how it would fall apart.
I agree. There's really something for everyone in Fist of the North Star, except your mum, perhaps. And yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoyed it. I don't want people to think that I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it. And I did find it very funny at times. Perhaps I didn't get into it in earnest to an extent. I couldn't get a sense of what kind of story they really wanted to tell, how they wanted it to resonate with the reader. I found it mostly funny and baffling at times, like really baffling.
Yeah, really baffling.
Because like you said, where's the food? There isn't even a lot of water. Where you get water from is it drives the plot in quite a few of the episodes. Yeah. Like, people have found a well, or the very first scene where he's introducing the apocalypse, some bandits, the classic mohawk. Everyone's got a mohawk, incidentally, if I hadn't mentioned that yet. It's very much, I think Road Warrior came out, that's Mad Max 2, came out in 1981?
Maybe.
And this came out in 83?
I think this started in 83.
Oh, it's clearly influenced by Mad Max 2. So someone's driving along in a car, seldomly see cars thereafter, but someone's driving in a car, the bandits destroy the car, and the thing they're thrilled most of all to find is water.
Yeah.
And they find a briefcase full of banknotes, and they scatter them to the winds and say, this is worth less than the paper we wipe our asses with.
Oh, that should have been another clue, like, why do people still carry on money? So that should have been a clue that it was within the lifetimes of people that this apocalypse had happened.
I dare say, but I think he was just, it was very early on, Volume 1, I think. Chapter. I think he was just, look, civilization's gone.
Yeah.
Because without civilization, money is worthless.
Yeah.
It's just
even at the
male bandits with
even at the end of Volume 4,
of variable height.
Even at the end of Volume 4, we still don't really know what happened. So there's one chapter where we know
it was a nuke.
We get a kind of montage about these military leaders that decided to push the button and destroy the world. Because there's this guy, Mad Sarge.
Oh, that was actually pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
Kenshiro ends up killing him and all his troops.
Oh, he's one of the people
barracks.
who can momentarily... That's another thing. Every now and again, every few chapters, after Kenshiro has effortlessly exploded a bunch of mooks, he'll confront someone with a martial arts specialty. Someone else who can also call their attacks, and it'll have a goofy name. And he'll be momentarily discombobulated, bleeding, as you say, for one panel. And but then he will promptly wipe the floor with them with a new power that he invents for the occasion. And Mad Sarge is one such. He's a master of guerrilla warfare. Which is apparently a kung fu style now.
Yeah, they talk about it like that. Yeah, I was actually confused when I was like, why does he keep talking about guerrilla warfare like it's a fighting style? I've killed hundreds of people with guerrilla warfare.
That's hilarious. But you're right, that scene is really cool, where he was very proud of his guerrilla warfare mastery, and of training all of his little soldiers in the power of guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, and part of his motivation
and the fat general
based around
him,
So part of his motivation was based around these guys that had nuked the world.
Yes, they were fat, and they said, I have more power in my fat finger I can push this button, and then they do nuke the world.
Well, okay.
And they're all dead, but he's still around.
But we don't know who those guys were. And when we get this flashback with Toki and Yuria, we see one nuclear explosion, and we see them running for the shelter, but there's no... They say the world is destroyed, but we don't know how the world was destroyed or why. We don't know why they pressed the button. We don't know... Was every country, like, wiped out by this? We don't know. We don't know.
Are they in Japan? I'm presumably they're in Japan.
If it's in their same lifetime, which it is.
Yeah, they were grown adults in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't children.
There could be other countries out there that are still, they're dealing with radioactive fallout, but they weren't nuked. Like, there could be cultures out there, civilizations that are just going along. It's almost business as usual.
The world building, there isn't any. It's a desert.
Yeah.
The civilization is in ruins. The landscape is littered with prisons.
Although...
There are no farms. Like, everyone dies for a handful of rice seeds.
Oh, yeah. So there's this guy in the second or third story arc.
Where
Kenshiro meets this old man who's been wandering the desert to bring a bag of seeds back to his village. And I'm like, and then he gets there, and there are all these able-bodied people. I'm like, why did you send this one old man out into the desert where he was attacked by raiders to get these seeds? None of that's important. What's important is, because of this situation, which doesn't make sense, there are bad guys. And they are bad. And they're really bad.
They say to, and they're bad. They have bad ideas. That one of them says to the man, why didn't you just eat these? Right. It's the seed. Here you go, because if I eat them, there won't be any more crops.
Right.
So the raiders are, nihilistic and short-sighted. But then, of course, everyone in the village dies. Absolutely everyone in the village dies. And Kenshiro scatters the rice seeds on the man's grave.
Oh, yeah. Why? Didn't he wander the desert and almost die? Didn't you need these seeds? Crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe, he just got rid of it. He just scattered I guess he said this, the crops would grow on the grave.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
Oh, it's very soulful, very emotional. As though those still waters run deep with Kenshiro. He has very deep feelings.
I think Buronson, he's making dramatic choices, not logical choices. And
a truer statement.
The dramatic choice is to scatter seeds on the grave of the man that died to collect those.
Absolutely everything that happens in these books is because of rule of cool.
Yes, exactly. Like when he does that flip over Mad Sarge and kills him after both his calves have been sliced open and he was seemingly in pain.
Yes.
The dramatic choice is he does a huge 12-foot flip in the air.
Yeah.
Spin flip.
And regenerates his jacket. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's whatever. Stop asking questions, nerd. Kenshiro is
you get to the last page of the chapter. Is it cooler to have his jacket or not have his jacket? It's cooler
Obviously, it's cooler to have his jacket.
So make sure the jacket's on there.
Yeah, damn right. That's the secret of Fist of the North Star. And you can either get on board or you can not bother. And I'm on board.
There was something else that came up in there I was going to mention.
I can have a quick look at my notes while you look at yours. Yeah. I've written down The Many Boys of the Wasteland. Apparently, Buronson's... I don't know if this is the translator, if it's Buronson, but a cutting insult is to call someone boy after a noun. Huh. So, Kabuki boy.
Right.
Kenshiro calls someone Kabuki boy at one point.
Yeah.
I think he also calls someone Mantis boy at some point.
Yes.
And there's also Karate boy is thrown around as an epithet in the final book.
Yeah.
And it's so silly.
Oh yeah, what's another funny thing related to that is there's never any real cursing. It's always son of a, you piece of.
Right.
And then the sentence cuts off. And the next panel, the guy's arm flies off and blood spurts out of it, or whatever. Yeah,
people's faces tear apart frequently.
They often go to Play-Doh shape, like they get really...
Oh, yeah.
They get into this melty, really funny Play-Doh kind of shape, and it's like, what did you do to me? And then the head explodes.
It will bulge because of the internal pressure. So people's heads will bulge obscenely before they're... And if you haven't seen the art, before, like, they tear in half. Like, eyeballs fly out, blood gushes out. It's incredibly gruesome, but there's no swearing. That might be from... I don't know if that's the translation convention or if it might be the original book perhaps didn't have swear words in it.
Well, it would...
But it seems ludicrous compared to, like, the insane... gore.
Yeah, compared to the gore, it's really funny, and it's funny how, I think in terms of translation, I mean, there's not really swear words in Japanese. And it would often be a cutoff line like you or something like that. And as a translator, you just go, you son of a, or something like that. But it's really innocent, except for a few shits here and there. But it also brings to mind how asexual it is and how chaste it is. Because there's this kind of platonic love almost for Yuria, because we never, except for that flashback, we never see, I don't think we really see Kenshiro and Yuria together. And there's Mamiya is kind of, maybe, she wants to be a fighter, but she's not really romantic. She kind of has some interest in Kenshiro, but they're like, no, he has his path that he has to follow in life. And she kind of, it's kind of distant.
You're right, there hasn't been a lot, and also there's not a lot of sexual violence, isn't there? It's mostly just the violence. Except for when Ray slices off her clothes with these air slices that he does. Oh, yeah, that. It's such a hilarious... And you get a full-page splash of Mamiya with her top off. With her top off. That was really weird. It was very weird, and it was not for the characters, it was for the reader, that moment. Because he's not interested in her, Kenshiro's not interested in her, nobody's like, look at you, you're not covering yourself, you're not... Well, she covers herself, and that's... she's deficient in warrior spirit. You're not ready to be a warrior. The chapter is called "You Are a Woman," and it's like you can't. You can't fight. I actually love that because it reminded me of that first episode of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, where Dr. Sanchez says, "Hello, Liz, you're a woman," or something like. Yes, I am, but please don't hold it against me, or something like that. Oh yeah. Oh my God, Dark Place. You're a woman, aren't you? Yeah. So there's a lot, there's not even really a lot of female, well, there are female characters. There's Rin, like, they're little kids or old women. There's the old lady that was taking care of the orphans. There's not really... Well, there's Yuria and Mamiya, and that's it, isn't there? And as far as, like, young people. And King Shin has some floozies. Yeah, a couple of the guys had some floozies that were, like, naked hangers-on. I think, was there more than Shin? I feel like there were 2 panels of some bad guy with 2 naked women, like one on each arm. But again, it was a really, like, it was so asexual. Like, there's nothing, like, he's not, like, there's no scene of him making out with the girls or even enjoying them or even looking at them. There's no male gaze from the characters, like, looking at these women or leering. There's no leering, there's no... It's like a Conan men are never like Franzetti or Conan the Barbarian kind of aesthetic. You know, we're in a savage barbarian time. Well... So you have to have scantily clad women hanging off muscular men? Yes, but in Conan, like, especially in the movie, which is one of my favorite movies... No, I don't mean the movie. I mean, I just like the art trope of sort of... Oh, yeah, the sword and sorcery kind of... sorcery. Yeah, that kind of trope of scantily clad women. Yeah, but there's no... And it wasn't there... There's a whole chapter where they're kidnapping all the women, but it's not for, like, sex. It's like... It's for eugenics purposes. Eugenics, yeah. It's not... There's not even any... It's really prepubescent is how I would describe it. Prepubescent is a great word. Because it's like, that's the boys, the guys who don't want to see kissing. Yep. Like, ew, kissing, I don't want to see that. But maybe by 4 volumes in, we're a few years into the series, it's like, okay, here's a bit of the fan service. In that one scene, which was not, it's just like, it's just a drawing of a naked woman standing there, and she's not even in a pose that's, like, alluring or anything. It's just, like, almost feels like editorial pressure or something, or, I don't know, what a weird moment. Yeah, I agree. It is. And it was discomforting. But I think you're onto something there with that word prepubescent. It's just, as you say, we just want to... The author, or perhaps the audience, just want to see faces getting kicked off by Bruce Lee, and they don't want any of that sort of discomforting business about girls. It's like, how's he going to kick off the guy's face this time? Yeah. And it's not even like... What pressure point is he going to use? Is the face going to fly off? That's what I want. It's because it's... Up in my treehouse reading... That's another real kind of American... Well, it's not even an American superhero thing. It's not like... There's no kryptonite for Kenshiro. There's nothing that can weaken him. And we know he's the best there is in the world. I think he even says himself, like, nobody is stronger than me in the world. And so there's very little drama usually. It's almost like... It's just an expectation of how's he going to do it this time? The structure of the story is not, oh my God, is he going to be able to beat this guy? This guy's gonna be able to beat Kenshiro, so how's he gonna outwit him? There's no outwitting, really. No, he's just invents a power. Better than those guys. And it's more just, is his heart going to explode? Are his guts going to come flying out his ears? Yeah. You know, will he split into 3 parts or 4? I mean, and he'll be given a little bit of trouble by like one of those mini bosses like Mad Sarge, or Shin. Yeah. or the guy that could turn his skin to steel.
Yeah.
And he'll be given a moment's trouble, a page or so.
Yeah.
But then he'll find a pressure point anyway.
Yeah,
you know, like this King Hart, a great big fat guy.
Ray came to his rescue one time, right? Like,
yes.
Where he was like almost... he was in trouble,
Right.
but then Ray showed up, and then...
He won't... You're right, though. He won't outwit them, because on at least 2 occasions, I think, you know, there's this guy, King Hart, King Shin's lieutenant, his second in command, is this enormously fat guy, and his gimmick is that Kenshiro can't reach his pressure points because of how fat he is.
Right. right.
And he's funny, and when he sees the sight of blood, he enters a psychotic rage. It's kind of cool.
Yes, yeah.
And he said, like, so, and Kenshiro's arm is trapped in his fat, and it looks bad for Kenshiro.
Yeah.
It's like, how's Kenshiro going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Is he going to outwit the fat guy? No. He just hits him. He just hits him and keeps hitting him until he reaches the pressure points, and then the guy dies.
Yeah.
Then he explodes.
Yeah.
It's like, but he, and as I'm reading it, but he. The whole thing was that you couldn't get his pressure points.
Yeah, but everybody has their skin is kind of, their bodies are kind of malleable. So sometimes when he hits someone, you'll see the hand or the arm go in, like if he was to hit somebody in the side, it would go in almost like Play-Doh. So like the whole body would be warped in a way that the arm's going in, that he's able to hit this
It's the same with the steel skin guy. He hits his pressure points.
You know what? The pressure points in this are like the word quantum in movies.
Yeah.
It's just a word that means, this is you can do anything. Especially it's in like Ant-Man.
Or tachyon.
Yeah, Tachyon's another one, but quantum is worse, I find, these days. And Ant-Man was on TV last night, and I was, they throw that word around. They're like, they don't know what this word means. Right. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like that. It's like this thing that we don't really fully understand, so we can just apply every... We can just assign every power to it.
Is a wizard, and he wizards his way out of situations. He doesn't... As you say, he doesn't outsmart his foes. He simply outfights them with his wizard powers.
Yeah.
But, who cares? Because people's heads fly off.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be cool? Who doesn't want to watch a show about a wizard that magics people's heads off?
Well, and we shall say that we keep saying its head's flying off, but that is a disservice to the book, because the variety of explosive kills is hilarious and fun. And it's what you look forward to every time. I remember, so one thing I remember in my notes which I found was we were talking about how you were saying it got kind of boring when the chapters got repetitive. The one moment I was like, oh, this is kind of boring all of a sudden, was there's suddenly a chapter where they're going to have an arm wrestling contest. And I'm like, wait a second. We've been blowing up people for 3 volumes in all sorts of ways, and now we're going to have arm wrestling? And then I turned the page, and the guy that's running the contest pulls the cloth off the table, and there are 2 rotating buzzsaws on either side. So whoever loses, their arm's going to get cut off. And I'm like, wait a second. There's no way these buzzsaws, which are elevated off the table, I flip back and forth 10 times. How did they not hear them? Yeah. How did they not hear them? See them. They're under the cloth. Yeah. They're not under the cloth in the previous panel. No. They're magically there in this panel. Yeah. And I'm also like, wait a second. If you lose, they kill the guy. I'm like, why do you need... They're looking for guys to be experimented on by Amoeba who's disguised as Toki. And it's like, wait, why do you need to kill the guy if he loses? Just don't take him back for the experimentation. Just leave him there.
Rule of cool.
Why do you need to cut his arm off? Just lose the arm wrestling and...
Right. Well, if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, don't read Fist of the North Star.
Yes.
If, on the other hand, you are interested in the many ways a person can explode, do read Fist of the North Star. Kumar, do you recommend Fist of the North Star?
Yes, 100%. I recommend it. But again, you can't be in the middle. If you're the kind of person that hates things that are dumb and doesn't laugh at things that are dumb, there's no winning. Right. But I have to say, the art is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
It's really pretty great. And again, I love the sincerity and dedication of it. And there was I was thinking about that line. I think it was it was Amoeba disguised as Toki. So Toki decided after because there's only ever one master of Hokuto Shinken, Toki, who was in the running, decided he was going to turn to healing people.
He took himself out of the running. Was that when he got exposed to radiation? Or...
Yes, I think
so. Before that, he was still in the running? So the master survived.
Don't remember.
Hokuto, I think it's a bit. Maybe the timeline will firm up a little bit in forthcoming volumes.
I don't remember now. That stuff was hard to keep track of. But he says a line so Amoeba is impersonating him, and Amoeba's doing all this human experimentation, and he says a line which is like, "It's no longer a time for healing. This is a time of violence."
Right.
Which again is a line that makes it feel like it's in their own lifetimes.
Yeah. Oh, it's clearly is.
I think it is. I mean, they explicitly is, but I mean that was another earlier clue.
But it doesn't matter, right?
But I kind of felt like that was another.
This is what we've established. It does. If you need solid world building, a timeline that makes sense, powers that are consistent, and reasonable within their own world.
Yeah,
you're not going to enjoy this unless you find those things. Unless you're able to laugh at things that you find absurd.
Yeah, but it really does work like the old Superman comics before Weisinger came on as editor, because you could totally see the kids, like Superman would ram a planet and split in two, and the kids would be like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" And they would tell their friends, like, "Did you read Superman this month? He rammed a planet with his head and split it in two." And they'd be like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" And not think about it any further than that. They would just think about the awesomeness of it. Yeah. But I feel like this is not like that, because 100% those DC writers were like, "These kids are dumb idiots.
Right.
Just write some shit.
Blow up a planet.
Just make some shit up," because the kids are so stupid. And I 100% feel like that was not the case here. They were like, I feel like Buronson and Hara were 8-year-olds that were like, "This is awesome."
Yep. They're 8-year-olds at heart, and they're completely sincere. Alright, that's excellent. So I would recommend it as well. If you're 8 years old, if you're in your treehouse and you don't let girls up there, and you want something rad to read, you want something... Hold on. I'm not just taking the piss. I'm being sincere.
Yeah.
And you want something rad to read where people's heads explode, you must read Fist of the North Star. But if you are 8 years old at heart as well, if you're a grown man or a grown woman, and your inner child is real to you, and you like things that are sincere, and you want to see how a man can fly and blow up heads, then you need to read Fist of the North Star, and you will love it. That's my little speech.
Yep. Okay. So I think rad is a great word to describe it. I think it's a perfect word, and rad. I also think that
rad to the max.
I think it has a clear vision. I think that's the thing that appealed to me about it. And I'm just using other words. I'm just saying the same thing again about how it has
sincere. It has sincerity, right? Yeah.
It has a real vision, of.
It's not cynical.
No, and the world is. The world building is terrible, but they are like, this is the world, and they don't know how it got there, and they describe it in a way that it can't have gotten that way, but they're living in it. They believe in it. I think they believe in the vision that they're presenting in this.
Yeah, they do. Bronson really wanted to tell a story about Heathcliff's brain in Bruce Lee's body.
Yes.
Wandering the wasteland in Mad Max's clothes.
Yeah.
And it is... And melting faces off
Lord Byron is definitely better than Heathcliff, because Heathcliff is like...
he's
deliberately mean. He's like, they're deliberately like, I'm going to ruin these people.
Lord Byron. Wouldn't that be awesome? Bring back, dig up Lord Byron's brain, put it in Bruce Lee's body.
Yeah. And
turn it loose on the wasteland in Mel Gibson's clothing. Bam!
Yeah.
That's a movie idea.
In Sylvester Stallone's body.
I don't see the Sylvester Stallone's
face, Schwarzenegger's body.
I suppose Kenshiro is definitely more muscular than Bruce Lee. No, bigger. Obviously, Bruce Lee was really muscular.
He actually started out a bit leaner. If you might have noticed in the earlier chapters, he looks a bit more alive, and then later on, it's like, no. Going full...
No, he's just...
Full thickness.
Full bodybuilder.
Yeah.
He's thickness.
Yeah.
He's thick.
Yeah.
Well... And we're back.
Okay. So that was Fist of the North Star. Now, 1995, which seems very late for a post-apocalyptic cheapo movie. I guess it's not an Italian post-apocalyptic cheapo movie, but it seems like an 80s kind of thing.
You're right.
I did see this movie on video in Japan when I was living in Japan. I rented it.
Was it the Japanese...
edition? No, that was produced by Toei and had the voice actors from the cartoon
That's
version.
Right, yeah. So more popular with fans of the anime in particular is the Japanese kind of cut. And there's a rumor that it might be longer.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't hear that.
Because one thing that happened, well, for starters, this did not get a theatrical release outside of Japan.
Yeah.
It got one in Japan.
Oh, okay, that's
apparently.
Good.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that So it's not so much of a cheat as I thought this week.
No, it had a genuine theatrical release, but it couldn't get a distributor for any other market.
Okay.
Orion apparently made an offer to the studio, and but wanted huge cuts.
Okay.
Because this film has some crazy effects in it. Some crazy gore. But also, not a huge amount of gore as well.
Rated R for
its
continuous, brutal, and gory violence, brief language. Which is exactly the comic.
Yeah.
When I saw that R rating, I was like, oh, okay.
So, they turned down Orion's offer to distribute because it would have meant cutting the film too much. Having said that, they did definitely cut apparently quite a bit of content, quite a bit of the gore. And from the original edit, there was something like 5 to 8 minutes that got cut, which would have been mostly maybe effects work, gore, blood spraying around, crazy stuff. And there's a rumour, unconfirmed rumour, that the Japanese theatrical release might have still had that footage.
Well, that's interesting, because I mentioned when we talked about the comic a year ago that in the cartoon, the 1986 theatrical version of the cartoon, which we may get around to someday, they actually pixelated the violence out, the gore. But the weird thing is, in that recording, as I re-listened to it myself in preparation, I mentioned Hellraiser.
You did, and isn't that funny?
Because of the bone-removing punch or whatever it was, the bone ejection punch or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
This is directed by Tony Randel.
Yes.
Randel, who he was a writer-producer on Godzilla 85 for Roger Corman's New World Pictures.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then he came in and he directed Hellraiser 2.
He did.
And this is also written by Peter Atkins, who also wrote Hellraiser. So this is the team that made Hellraiser 2.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Peter Atkins wrote Hellraiser 2 to 4.
Yes, yes. And Randall's also credited as a writer on Hellraiser 3 as well.
Amazing.
Now,
this is the Hellraiser guys.
Hellraiser 2 is messy, but it's kind of the only other good one besides the first one. Like, except for the one that came out last year or whatever, which is...
I've only ever seen the first one, and obviously it's cool.
2's the only one that's kind of like, okay, I'm on board for it, you know. It's not perfect by any means, but I was really thinking these guys should have been perfect for this material. If you look at that credit, if you look at Hellraiser 2, and then you look at what Fist of the North Star is, and the bone ejection punch, or whatever it's called, you'd be like, oh, these are the guys to do it. And there's a moment, in the opening of the movie, we actually get the fight with Zed. So Zed, the first chapter of the manga, we get this bandit called Zed, and he fights Zed, first guy he fights in the movie, and his head starts to explode, and we don't see explosion, we just hear the sound effect of the splurch.
Yeah, I think that might have been one of the... something that ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Because we do see people's heads kind of explode a bit later on.
They start, they warp. They get the Play-Doh warp that we talked about in the comics. They, mutate and stuff. Like, they're bulging with this Hokuto energy, which is going to blow them up from the inside. Yeah. But then we don't see the burst.
No.
We do get some... The gory bits are, like... Shin has this attack where he causes your forearms to burst open, and he does it twice.
Blood pressure goes up really high and shoots out of your...
Yeah, and
he shoots out of the vein in your inner elbow, right?
Yeah, and he does it twice.
Grisly.
And that is pretty gory, but I'm surprised they didn't leave the head bursting stuff in, kind of, because of that.
Yeah.
And when I saw the R rating, I was like, okay, this must be pretty gory. I didn't quite remember it. It's mostly escaped from memory, but yeah. So opening credits we get based on the graphic novels is how it's credited.
Right. Not manga.
By Buronson and Tetsuo Hara. This movie's 87 minutes, and there's 3 minutes of opening credits and 4 minutes of closing credits.
Oh, yeah.
And the movie's still not like 9 hours long.
It's so turgid. Yeah, there are scenes that just go forever, and there's all this pompous dialogue or narration.
Yeah.
And this film cannot make up its mind what it is.
Yeah.
This film is a complete mess.
Yeah.
From start to finish. Is it an action film? The action's terrible, mostly. Is it a horror film? There's horror elements. These are the horror guys.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's only part of the film, and a bunch of it ended up on the cutting room floor anyway. Is this a post-apocalyptic story? We barely see the post-apocalyptic world. This film was shot entirely on a soundstage.
You can tell, especially the wasteland shots.
Yeah.
Are always in close-ups of characters. The
whole film's in close-up virtually because it's all shot on a soundstage and it all needs to be close and tight so that we can't see.
Yeah.
You know, we can't see the edges.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
I mean, just go out and shoot in a desert, guys.
Yeah.
At night or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's no... I don't think they shot outside.
No, there's no outside shots as far as I can tell. It's all indoors, either on that soundstage or in some random building.
Yes, yeah.
Just terrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, complete mess. But there's melodramatic music playing constantly all the way through.
The music was over the top and very generic.
Generic music.
Yeah.
Yeah, a mess. Can't make up its mind what it's going to be. And of course the performances are just awful as well. I mean, these performances are terrible.
You know what? I thought, so we've got this one Japanese actress, Isako Washio, who plays Julia in this.
Yeah.
And she is seen, I don't know much about her. I looked up her credits. She doesn't have that many.
I also looked them up, yeah.
And I think
but she did win an award.
Yes, but I think she would have, it seemed like she was reading her lines phonetically, but I felt like everybody was reading their lines phonetically.
Yeah.
I felt like Gary Daniels, who plays Kenshiro, is really trying to cover up his British accent in a way that's, he's really struggling to do it.
Yeah,
He obviously doesn't have that much control over it.
Everyone gives a terrible performance. Gary Daniels, he can't help. He doesn't have the chops, I guess, to be a leading man. Maybe he can't get to grips with the nonsense the script requires him to say.
Yes. Malcolm McDowell cannot say Kenshiro's name. It says Kenshiro every time. And obviously, so I think I know why this is happening. I think what they've done is they've gone with what's called Hepburn romanization of the letters, which means Kenshiro would end with, because the last O sound is long, they would put O-U, is how they would spell it, O-U.
Oh, right.
Instead of going O-O, which would be U, they would put O-U to make it clear that it's O.
Why would they do that?
Well, I don't know how the Hepburn romanization system came up, but... Well, often, a lot of manga, it depends on the company. They're like, we want you to do the romanization this way or whatever. But the problem is, I always feel, in English, our vowel sounds are longer anyway. They're almost like the long Japanese vowel sound, so you don't need that. Anyway.
No, you don't need. You're right.
But anyway,
why would
he
Peter
keeps
Atkins
saying
put it in his script?
I don't know, and everyone else is always saying Kenshiro, which is normal for an English pronunciation of everything. The accent goes on the Kenshiro instead of Kenshiro. She's the only one who actually says his name right.
She says it constantly.
Yes.
It's about the only word I think she's comfortable saying in the film. So she says it about 20 times a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Malcolm McDowell, who you mentioned, another reason why he probably mispronounces Kenshiro's name is because he absolutely banged this out in an afternoon.
Oh, I have no doubt. No doubt.
Probably
He's got
3
one
hours work.
scene with... Okay, so we actually get some of the plot from the comics, which surprised me a little bit. Except there's been some changes, like... Okay, so the world is actually controlled by the Southern Cross, or the Order. The Wasteland is dominated by the Southern Cross, which is not a thing in the comics. The Southern Cross is just this one city where Shin rules.
Good point. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, sure. I think it's a pretty, at least plot-wise, it's a fairly kind of like, it pretty much encapsulates Volume 1 of the manga.
Yes.
Kenshiro's wandering.
Yep. We get to fight with Zeed.
Yeah, we get to fight with Zeed, and then he sort of has a showdown with Shin, who is the guy that scarred him, and has captured / abducted his love.
Yes.
With whom there's a sort of lame love triangle going on.
Yes. Now, where was I going with it? Oh, Malcolm McDowell and his afternoon. My thing is, we get a flashback scene of Shin killing Ryuken. Malcolm McDowell's playing Ryuken, who is the founder, or not the founder, he's the current holder of Hokuto Shinken.
In Volume 1, actually, so yeah.
Yes, and he's had to choose a successor. In the manga, it's 4. Yeah. It's Jagi, Rao, Kenshiro, and Shin, and Kenshiro ends up getting it.
Yeah.
In this, Shin comes in, and he shoots, it's in the first 5 or 10 minutes, he shoots Ryuken in the head with a gun.
I think it's the first scene.
With a pistol.
It's the first scene, right? After the info dump.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm like, this is a martial arts manga where this dude's supposed to come in and fight. You would expect a long fight between Shin and Ryuken. No. I think it was actually Rao in the comic, but that doesn't matter.
McDowell is not getting up.
No. He sits down. He sits down the whole movie.
He never stands up.
Never stands up. And a gun, I wonder if there was they wrote a fight scene and Malcolm McDowell's like, no. And then Shin comes in with a pistol and shoots the current holder of Hokuto Shinken. It was crazy to me.
Yeah, I don't want to give this film too much credit. I think I like your explanation better because I like your explanation that Malcolm McDowell said, no, you've got me for 3 hours. We're on the clock. I'm not learning any of this crap. Yeah, like the fighting in Gary Daniels is a champion kickboxer.
Yeah.
And he's very impressive whenever the camera gives him a bit of room.
Yeah, just stop for a minute, which almost never does. There's
No.
a constant cutting. Especially if it's one of the other fights, it's just every punch, cut, punch, cut, punch, cut. It's the worst. Sometimes we get a couple of seconds on Gary Daniels, and he'll get 2 or 3 kicks in a row.
Apparently he was trying... So I don't think this film had a choreographer or a proper one, a fight choreographer, right? So... According to, I listened to a review, and this is hearsay. The reviewer watched the DVD release, which has a director's commentary with Gary Daniels.
Okay.
And an interview with Gary Daniels
Okay.
about production, where apparently he's just taking the piss out of the whole movie.
Yeah.
Sounds great. I wish we could have watched it. I wish we could have listened to it before this for preparation. But this is a source for a lot of anecdotes about the film.
Okay.
According to this review, Gary Daniels is trying to set up fight scenes, trying to choreograph them.
Okay.
Asking the director, can we choreograph this? And in fact, he did choreograph, and I think more or less direct one scene. And I bet you can guess which scene it is.
The fight with Shin?
No.
Oh.
Just before the fight with Shin, when he enters the building for the first time.
Okay.
Because it's the only one with any decent fighting in it.
Okay.
And it's the only one where the camera's more than a meter away from anyone's face.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So it's when he enters the foyer and the lobby and he fights all of those guys.
You can tell I did watch an interview with him talking about City Hunter.
Oh,
which he had done with Jackie Chan.
Which is, this is a comic book movie.
It will be on this podcast. We will be covering it. He did that with Jackie Chan, and he talks about that scene, the way they worked, it would have been night and day. And he would have probably been coming into this. I can just imagine him hoping he would have a similar experience. In terms of really working out the fights and shooting them well, and just spending days on a single fight.
There was none of that.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. He's clashing with the director a lot, apparently, over this. The director's probably saying, have you read the manga? Hardly anyone actually fights. It's mostly just Kenshiro touching people and then their heads exploding.
Yeah, and it actually looked really bad on film.
Yeah.
And I'll also say, the thing is, when he does the... and punches 50 times, it looks ridiculous because it's just it looks like soft punches.
So in that's not really something that happens much in the manga, is it? Does Kenshiro do blurring?
Yeah, absolutely,
okay. All
the time.
Because I felt like that happens a lot. That happens in the anime,
yes,
where when he overloads Z's pressure points, or however Hokuto Shinken works. He's and his arms blurring. But getting Gary Daniels to do this, who's like a incredibly ripped and a talented kickboxer, it then has him sort of play fighting, lightly pummeling him around and touching his head, touching his neck. It looks so silly.
And they never say channeling points once in this movie. Not even once, I don't think.
Everything's vague. It's hopelessly vague. Why even adapt it if you're not going to talk about... We never even really know what Fist of the North Star is.
Yeah, we don't know why people are exploding when he tickles them.
We don't know what... We don't really... I think it's sort of hinted at the start in Malcolm McDowell's initial narration that these are rival martial arts schools.
Yes.
But it's far from clear. It's far from clear what's the distinction between Southern Cross the city, Southern Cross the state, and Southern Cross the martial arts style.
Yeah.
Not clear at all. No difference between them.
Yeah. There's
no... And then so what's North Star then? North Star is just Kenshiro and maybe Malcolm McDowell in his red bathrobe. What are the stakes? And there's all this pompous kind of pseudo-prophetic dialogue, talking about Kenshiro's destiny.
And Kenshiro's trying to deny his destiny. This is the very opposite from the comic book, where he's like, I am the inheritor of Hokuto Shinken. Everyone who comes at him, they're like, Jagi's like, no, it's me. He's like, no, it's me. Kenshiro kills him.
Yeah.
This is not like in the movie. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to fulfill my destiny." He's always really reluctant.
He seems to want to, and there's a line.
He has to be confronted by the literal zombie of Ryuken.
Oh yeah, that's right.
To be convinced.
That's very Hellraiser. A zombie appears.
Yes. He's kind of reluctant, and then he's into it, and then sometimes he's reluctant again. It's very unclear what's going on.
His motivation's not clear at all because he can't act, so we don't really know what he's thinking. He's being urged by... Sometimes he wants to help people, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he really wants to fight Shin. Sometimes it seems like he doesn't. And meanwhile, there's all people...
And they're not supposed to fight or something?
Yeah, that's another thing. North Star and Southern Cross must not fight.
Right.
And... Why?
Yes, and then they fight. Anyway.
Yeah, but then they fight.
Yeah.
But why? Why must they not fight?
Yeah.
Put some legwork in. And, yeah. And
Also,
while we're on the topic...
they talk about the people are waiting for the Fist of the North Star to appear. Like
they know about the
downtrodden
North Star,
people are like, when will he come, our savior? Unlike the comic, where it's a bad omen.
Oh yeah.
When the Fist of the North Star shows up, that's like bad news. Things are going to go bad.
And that's just one scene too, where they're getting ready for the invasion of the Southern Cross goons.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is walking around talking about the Great Fist of the North Star. It's like, how do you even know? Where did this come from?
Yes.
Like, they just haven't put in the world building. There's no prophecy.
Yeah.
It's just melodramatic, vague, nebulous dialogue constantly being uttered, and we're supposed to pick something out of it that makes sense. Impossible.
Yeah, very hard. I found it very hard to follow.
Yeah,
what was going on? So we've got this, like the Southern Cross seems to be rulers, which is not the situation in the comic. So we've already got a situation that's different in the sense of he's not just one guy over there that Kenshiro is going to go after. This is like the world order that he has to overthrow. So we've got almost a very traditional kind of setup. Ryuken is played very much like Obi-Wan in this, in the way he speaks to Kenshiro through like ghosts and stuff after he's dead.
Yeah.
But of course...
He possesses the little girl.
Of course, Ryuken was a ripoff of Obi-Wan in the comics, but Obi-Wan was a ripoff of all the sensei masters from all the martial arts movies that came from Japan before Star Wars.
Wheels within wheels.
We're going back through a chain. Yes, you could call it wheels within wheels. I would just call it a long chain of this idea just coming through again and again.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, the cast. So you mentioned Gary Daniels, who, by the way, his teeth are something else. They're pearly white.
Yeah, very white.
Really, whenever he opens his mouth and you see his teeth, you're like,
it's distracting because his face is often dirty.
Yes. He's so dirty.
His teeth really stand out.
Dirty wasteland man has perfect teeth.
It's his martial art, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Melvin Van Peebles is in this movie. I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is like a movie I would watch anyway. Like, oh, this is some B video movie with Melvin Van Peebles. Okay, I'll watch this. Downtown Julie Brown from MTV is in this movie for some reason.
I saw that credit in the opening credits. I'm like, who is Downtown Julie Brown?
Yeah.
Leon Vader White was another.
He was Goliath. I don't know who that guy is.
I think it was the big dude.
The character Goliath, yeah. But he's supposed to be a giant. They shoot him like a giant for a few scenes. They get the undershot. Or like, okay, this is going to be a Fist of North Star character that's 20 feet tall, like we get in Fist of North Star. Yeah. No.
This film had a disappointing lack of 20 foot tall men.
No. They talked about it. His name was Goliath. They kept showing him like he was really huge. And then when we get a two-shot with him and Ken, he's just like the same.
Well, there's only so much you can do, isn't there?
Yes, that's true.
They haven't got the time to do a kind of Hobbit-style force perspective.
Yeah. Dante Basco was Bat, who was from Hook. He was Rufio.
He was Rufio. And he died again in this film, just like he died in Hook, which brought back traumatic memories for me.
Yeah.
He's also the voice of Prince Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, okay.
Which is what he's doing these days, I suppose.
Okay, I see. Clint Howard.
Yes.
In
comic
a pretty
book movie Oblivion All-Star.
Yeah, pretty meaty kind of role a little bit, I guess. He's just one of these bandits.
He's credited as Stalin.
Stalin, okay.
So that makes 3 for Clint Howard. 3 comic book movie Oblivion films.
One was Barbed Wire. What was the other one?
Rocketeer.
Oh, Rocketeer. Oh, right. Yes, of course, in the background.
And Malcolm McDowell also on 3.
Okay.
Tank Girl.
Yep.
Fist of the North Star. And a very, very tenuous example here. Teen Titans Go. He voiced a character called Mad Mod in the original cartoon.
Oh.
And that character has a non-speaking cameo.
Okay. They couldn't get him to come in and sit down in his red robe and do the recording.
And do all his ADR.
Okay, we got to talk about Chris Penn. Chris Penn is in this movie.
Yes, that's Sean Penn's brother.
Yes, it was, so we're talking about like 5 or 6 years after Best of the Best. So he's got a little bit of, I don't know why, but he's got a little bit of martial arts cred because he was in Best of the Best. I don't know why he was in that movie. He's supposedly playing Jackal in this movie.
Yeah.
He's called Jackal. He's nothing like Jackal in the comics. Jackal in the comics is this dude.
Jaggy in the comics?
No, he's Jackal. Jackal is a separate guy. Jackal is a guy, he's hanging out in the tavern. He's got a bathtub in the tavern that Kenshiro goes to, that he's just like bathing, he's having bubble baths he's not upstairs or anything, he's there behind a curtain, and he overhears what's going on, and then...
That's right, it's in volume 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it's...
or is it volume? No, it's volume 1. You're right. Okay, I thought, but he's a combination of that character and Jaggy.
Yes,
because
that's
he's wearing
right.
he's wearing the leather straps all over his head.
Yes, that's right.
Which is what Kenshiro's brother Jaggy wears this device, because Kenshiro blew up his head and he's had to strap it down.
Yes, and they've made him a henchman of Shin, which makes him more like the Cards gang, like Spade and Hart and all those guys.
It's just a mess.
So he's a mix of three guys.
If you like the manga, you're not going to like this, because they're just mixing up all the characters and it's not really making any sense.
Yeah. And Andre Rosey Brown, who was Big Fatso in Barbed Wire, is in this movie as this big thug with like one eye messed up.
Oh yeah, you're right. He actually takes a kick to the face.
Yes. Yes.
Which I'm pretty sure was an accident, but they kept it in. Well, because you would, right?
Yeah, I loved seeing him in this. I would have never recognized him before playing Big Fatso in Barbed Wire. But he was the guy that was like in the dump truck, or like he was in the digger.
He was in the Earth Mover and he was eating chicken.
Yes.
Or was it turkey?
Also, the guy that played Zed is a guy named Nils Allen Stewart, and he was apparently also in Barbed Wire, which is the year after this. As some thug or something or other, yeah.
It's amazing how many random cool actors are in this film.
Yeah.
And yet, they're all just terribly cast, mostly, in the wrong roles. They should have mixed them all around.
Actually, Isako Washio, although she has to phonetically read her lines, probably, is kind of the only one.
At least she's a Japanese actor playing supposed to be a Japanese character.
Yes.
Where can we get obviously, Kenshiro is supposed to be a Japanese character.
I really wonder how she got... Yeah, Ryuken? It's bizarre. But I wonder how she got... I really want to know the story behind her casting.
This was doing my head in two.
Okay.
And I think the answer is in that this film was a co-production between two production companies.
Okay.
First Look Studio, which is an American one, and a Japanese one, Ozra Pictures.
Okay.
So I imagine she came in through that connection.
Right.
They probably said, we want our... Because this was...
Or they have a suggestion for somebody that could play the role.
Yeah, because this was, as we said, this had a theatrical release in Japan.
Right.
So this was obviously intended to be sold in Japan as well as America.
Right. Okay. Shin in this sometimes goes around and... He's not like Shin. This actor, Costas Mandylor, apparently Australian.
He is Australian.
Looks distractingly like Christopher Lambert.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
But he's not like Shin in the comics in the sense the first time we meet Shin in the comics, he's butt naked with a woman on each arm.
Yeah.
And this guy's not like that. And sometimes he's like wearing like suits, or at least he's got these posters up of himself.
I'm going to talk about the posters.
And he's trying to promote Julia as the mother of the future, and he's got big Brother type posters all over.
I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we'll finish talking about Shin. Yeah. This is bad casting. He even looks a lot like Christopher Lambert. He also looks quite a bit like Gary Daniels.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, are they supposed to be brothers? No, they're supposed to be from rival martial arts schools. I can't even. Very early on in the film, I couldn't tell which one was which.
Yeah.
And he just, he seems like he's asleep half the time. He's just sort of.
I wonder how he got the role too, because he doesn't seem like a martial artist, and he has a big fight with Gary Daniels at the end, and it's a mismatch because Gary Daniels looks great.
Yeah.
He's so jacked, and he can actually fight, and this guy...
They've put him in a leather waistcoat.
Yeah, they make sure he doesn't take his top off.
Yeah, well, I think that's partly because that guy, he's obviously not in as good shape as Gary Daniels. No. Gary Daniels is in incredible shape.
Yeah.
He is an absolute mesomorph. He's just lean muscle. He doesn't have that kind of the modern kind of Hollywood muscle that they stack on in their prep camps or whatever. Yeah. This is a guy that's been kicking a target every single day for the last 15 years. Yeah. Like, he is lean muscle. He looks fantastic. And whereas, the guy that's playing Shin, they put him in this waistcoat maybe so we can't see his pot.
I don't know if it's that. I just don't think he's ripped.
I have another theory. That's not fair to this bloke. Of course, he just can't compare. And also, I think maybe there might have been a stand-in in some of the long shots.
Right.
And so put him in that waistcoat so that we look at the waistcoat and not at how the actor is changing physique. I did slow it down and try to see. I couldn't say for sure. But I do want to... Since you brought up the posters, I absolutely want to talk about the posters. the paintings that Shin has in his lair, in his castle, in his office.
Yeah.
We never really find out what it is. Someone in the art design team had a really fun time with these paintings.
Yeah.
So the first one, the one where he looks like Leon Trotsky.
Yeah. yeah.
That is, I was looking at it, I think, this looks very familiar. It's a real propaganda poster. A real Soviet propaganda poster called Lenin Lives.
Okay.
And I looked it up, and it's exactly the same. They
love it.
just put
his face
on it and given him a Trotsky-style hairstyle. Because, of course, Lenin's bald. Yeah. Where there was a hammer and sickle, they've replaced it with the symbol of the Southern Cross, which, incidentally, is an upside-down crucifix.
Yes.
Which is another thing the movie screws up, because it's not the constellations.
Yeah.
I think there's... At the beginning of the film, we see the constellation, the Big Dipper. It turns into the scars on Kenshiro's chest, but that's all we get.
Right.
We absolutely... No other connection, and there's no... So we don't know that Shin is practicing the opposite but equivalent school associated with the Little Dipper or the southern version of that.
Yes, and it's supposed to do external damage instead of from the inside. You're supposed to be able to stick your fingers. They don't explain how he can stick his fingers into Kenshiro's
So
chest.
in the manga, Kenshiro practices the northern constellation art, which is like the yang to Shin's southern constellation style, which is the yang to it.
Yeah.
And they're complementary but different. All missing, and instead we have an upside down crucifix as the symbol because Southern Cross.
Right.
Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, anyway, really bad.
Alright, next thing. Okay, the other two paintings. So as you said, Shin has these paintings in his lair. He has a painting of Julia where she's this idealized feminine figure. She's wearing sort of like a white shift. There's a blue scarf in the background. And next to it, there's one of him wearing what looks like a long coat, a tie, business attire, but very recognizably with his face. Again, these are real paintings.
Right, okay.
That the art team has put some love and work into repainting them to look like.
Okay.
And they are by an Art Deco portraitist called Tamara de Lempicka.
Okay.
Did most of her work in the 1920s. They are called Portrait of a Man, or Mr. Tadeusz de Lempicka. So in the man one is the portrait of her husband, painted in 1928. The one of Julia is called Portrait of Madame M, painted in 1932.
Okay.
So these, and I assume if you're active in the art world, you would instantly recognise these paintings, because Portrait of Madame M sold in 2009 for $6 million. At that point, the highest selling painting by this artist. Also, incidentally, more money than this film cost to make.
Oh, I got another question. How many of those people who knew about that piece of work were also the type that would watch this movie? I think very few.
I don't think there's a large overlap
that
there.
Venn diagram is... I think those circles are pretty far apart.
That's not a big overlap. But
Yeah.
And I watched it. And
That's true. That's true.
I was thrilled, and I spent a lot of time tracking down these references, and I'm going to put them on the Facebook page.
Excellent.
Where you alone will see them.
Yes. I love it.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Oh, and the final thing I want to say about that is these paintings give us more characterization about Shin than anything he ever says or does.
Yes.
We get that he's trying to use the knowledge of the lost world to build a new world, and he's using the knowledge of, say, socialist realism and propaganda to set Julia up as the
we
mother
haven't
of
mentioned
the
that
people.
he has this whole plot to make the world a better place. He's gonna build infrastructure. This is a whole plan, which is I actually thought it was kind of interesting. It's not like the comics, but he's like, I'm gonna build bridges, I'm gonna build hospitals, I'm gonna do all this stuff, but in order to do that, I need to do this stuff.
The idea that he's knowledgeable about the past, like an educated man who's capable of twisting and reusing ideas from Art Deco Europe or from Soviet Russia. That to me is far more interesting than when he pokes holes in Kenshiro's chest. Or absolutely anything that Malcolm McDowell says in his role as Ryokan.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have to say. Sorry, that was far and away my favourite thing about the movie.
I'm gonna give the movie a little bit of credit, probably where it doesn't deserve.
Yep.
In 2 points. One is there's a moment where Ken's face dissolves to Shin's face, and there's a dissolve and an overlap, and I thought, that's a clever bit of like visual symbolism.
Yep.
I don't know if they planned it, but I thought it worked. Another is a moment where Julia says something, she's arguing Shin about something, and she says, "I am already dead."
She does say that,
and I thought, that's either Peter Atkins just forgot that that's the whole point of this manga, that line, or
I think it's deliberate.
or he's actually deliberately drawing a parallel
because
there.
Kenshiro himself says it in his first fight. He says,
Yes.
"You're already dead."
You're
to
already
Z.
dead, yeah.
So it's bookends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I liked it.
In the fight with Shin, Shin says to Kenshiro that Julia is dead.
Yeah.
I guess to make him lose his resolve to fight. I'm not sure. She is meanwhile being chased around a foundry by Jackal, Chris Penn, in the most prolonged parallel fight scene. It goes on for like 20 minutes of Chris Penn trying to rape her, essentially, for a very long. It just goes on and on. Finally, they're reunited. So she's a queen in this. She's like, the people worship her as a queen because...
They all bow down to her at the end, which is
he
very
set up all
strange.
these posters that she's Mother of the Future, so he's actually setting her up for this. She's part of his plan to establish this utopia, of Shin's plan. So they bow down to her, and that's how it's kind of resolved it. That's why the guys
created a cult of personality around her.
And also then she kisses Shin. Maybe she hugs him at that, but she kisses him earlier in the movie, which I thought was a violation of the tenets of the comic, in a sense.
No kissing. No girls kissing.
Yeah, and also in the final fight there was this little flower. So she drops a seed into a crack in the ground.
She's always holding these seeds.
Yeah.
So is this a nod to the chapter about rice seeds?
It's possible. It really is possible.
Be, right?
Yeah.
Because, but also it's weird because in another example of the film's constant dialogue about destiny and the future and none of it making any sense or meaning anything, Kenshiro gives Julia these seeds, doesn't say what they are or what they're for, he just says, "These are the future.
Right.
Hold these. Keep them safe." She goes, "I will keep them safe." And then she's always holding them.
Yes.
When she's in Kenshiro's... Sorry, not Kenshiro. When she's in Shin's palace, she's always holding these seeds. Why is she holding the seeds? What are the seeds? What is the significance of them? What are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
It's never explained.
Yeah. But
and
one falls into a crack and it grows a flower out of the crack. There's no soil or watering or... And I don't know how long it's been sitting in that crack, but it grows.
No, because it fell in... Yeah.
And it inspires Kenshiro in the final fight to get off his ass and, like...
I guess...
beat Shin.
Are the seeds meant to be symbolic? Clearly, I suppose the seeds are meant to be symbolic of something.
Yeah.
But what it is not clear. Well, it's like hope or something. It's like hope.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. The future.
But why
seeds? A brighter future. Yeah. I don't know.
Why? It's so dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing in this movie is Kenshiro can hear. He has a psychic connection with Lin.
Because he heals her.
He healed her
eyes, and then he can see through
She's
her
blind
eyes.
in this. She's not mute. In the comics, she was mute, and then he healed her, and then she finally spoke.
Why do that? Why not just...
And she's also Bat's sister, and so they've kind of tied them together.
Yeah.
But it gives them an excuse to hang out
Why
together.
make her blind instead of mute?
I don't know.
Is it easier to show blindness than it is muteness?
No, because when she can see, she smiles at Kenshiro's face, and that's it. You'd think she would have a stronger reaction to having her eyesight
Well, it was
back.
hysterical blindness, wasn't it?
Well, in the comic it was. She'd seen her parents killed or something, and then she never
it's the same
spoke
in the
after
film.
that.
It's the same in the film.
Yeah, so after that, he has a psychic connection, like he can hear her and stuff. It's a script shortcut, so he knows where she is and knows to rescue her.
I don't even know
and
why
stuff.
they bothered. There's only 2 sets in this universe.
Yeah, it's really... Again, it's like cheaper than those cheapo 80s movies. I'm thinking of like Cyborg
At least
with Van Damme.
They would often go to cool locations like old...
They'd find an abandoned place.
Yeah, like an old warehouse.
Yeah. And I think Cyborg used, wasn't it? It used costumes from Masters of the Universe or vice versa or something. So it was like a canon picture. And it had that kind of trash is somehow more visually satisfying.
Yes. Yeah.
It was just such a bummer seeing the same sets, the same close-ups over and over again, not having any long shots of anything.
Yeah, it's just boring. It's not even... This film is funny to watch. I could certainly, much like I said about Sovereign of the Damned last week, you could have this film on in the background
Yes.
when you're doing something else.
Yes.
like playing board games with your mates or whatever,
Yeah.
and you could watch it every now and again. It's like, oh my god, look, Kenshiro is like gently massaging this guy's sternum.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but sitting down and watching it, it's a slog to get through.
But also, another thing I realized watching it was I would have, before last week, if you'd asked me what is Fist of North Star, I would have said, well, it's a martial arts manga, an apocalyptic martial arts manga. But watching the movie, I realized, no, it's not. It's an apocalyptic fantasy. It's not martial arts. Because seeing people actually do martial arts, it's just kind of drained of the power that the manga has. Where they're supposedly doing martial arts, but it's not.
They don't actually do. They're more like wizards.
Seeing guys actually punch and kick, they're more like wizards. Seeing guys punch and kick each other. That first fight with Zed, he actually kicks a guy in the crotch or the leg or something to get him away from the girl that he's attacking, and I'm like, and it's weird. Like
Kenshiro doesn't need to punch a guy in the crotch.
No, exactly.
Kenshiro, with a wave of his hand, guys fall over and their arms and legs fall off.
Yes. Yeah.
He doesn't need to work up a sweat.
Yeah. There's definitely some kind of Hollywood like standardized script writing going on here, where it's like, oh, we need to have this type of conflict. Or you need to overcome these difficulties.
Yeah. For sure.
You know what I mean?
I mean, this film suffers.
Like there's like that first scene. So in the very opening, Kenshiro is wandering the land, much like he's in the comic, and he comes across this hovel where a man and a woman are living in there, and he goes in there.
Yeah.
They're attacked by bandits, and he's in the house, and he's like not sure. Should I go out there and save them or not? And finally, he does come out. It's very unclear. Like, why is he hesitating to go out there and just beat these guys up? That kind of
it doesn't make sense.
Stuff. It happens a couple times in the movie where he's like, should I fight these guys?
And it's never explained why. Because I mean, in the manga, Kenshiro knows that he usually makes things worse. He's aware of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's the nature of his dark art that it's suffering.
Oh yeah, then the bandits who want revenge will come kill the whole village, which happens all the time.
In this, Kenshiro does not. We get no hints of that in the film.
Right.
Kenshiro just seems confused about where he is and what he's doing.
Right.
A lot of the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you might have noticed we've talked very little about the plot of this movie.
I think we kind of covered
We've been jumping around a lot because the plot.
It's 80 minutes. It's about 80 minutes long, and it's very long, lingering shots of stuff that there's not that much
interspersed with some pompous ranting and narrative dumps which aren't narrating anything. There's a lot of nonsense about destiny and the future and seeds.
Yeah, okay.
But so, Kenshiro has to have his big showdown with Shin to rescue Julia, who loves him, but not Shin, but has been captured by Shin. And meanwhile, there's a place called Paradise Falls where all the extras live.
Yeah.
And Kenshiro is sort of, the B plot is he's keeping them safe from the Southern Cross's expansion, because they want to seize the town because it has water.
Right.
Water is
they do
scarce.
talk about water, yes, which is like the comic. There is an obsession about the water that's there. The most precious asset, I think one character calls it.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any... I've gotten to the end of my notes, so do you have any trivia or anything you want to add?
I absolutely do.
All right, go for it.
There's not really much else we need to say about the film, is there? Chris Penn gets some okay lines.
Yes, actually, I did like he gives a speech about delighting and killing and stuff that I think is pretty good, actually.
I didn't like the speech.
Okay.
I think it's the least motivating speech in history. There's all kinds of...
No, it's not motivating.
Well, he's meant to be riling up his followers, right?
Yes,
but he's talking about riding a hungry tiger, and there's all these cracked metaphors, and he's just not... He's not well cast here. He's just really hammy and silly.
Yeah.
And I think... he's supposed to be humorous. We're supposed to get humour from him because he has all these lines.
Yes,
like
certainly.
He says it ain't easy being sleazy at one point.
Yeah.
I don't really think you're sleazy. You're a murderous bandit.
Yeah.
That's not. I associate sleaze with something. He does try to rape Julia. That's pretty.
That's
sleazy.
the scene when he delivers the line.
No, it's not. He delivers the line earlier when they're invading the village.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't fit.
Okay.
I don't think murder and torture and burning down towns isn't what I think of when you say the word sleaze.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. All right, trivia time. As we said, this film had a budget of $5 million at the time.
Okay.
Shot over the course of only 30 days.
Okay.
All on a soundstage, or almost exclusively on a soundstage in Los Angeles. As you mentioned, Tony Randel and Peter Atkins were the creative team. They co-wrote it together, and they also, of course, did the same on Hellraiser.
Hellraiser 2, yeah.
Hellraiser 2, yes, that's right. Interestingly, Gary Daniels has a son.
Okay.
I bet you can guess what his son's name is.
Is it Kenshiro?
It is.
Whoa, that's awesome. I love it.
He has a son. Kenshiro Daniels is a professional soccer player.
Okay.
He plays for the Philippines, or I think this year I think he might be playing for Thailand. But he played for the Filipino national team because his mother is Filipino.
You know what I love about this is that it shows that Gary Daniels knew this was a crap movie, but he loved the manga, and he read the manga, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get to be this guy."
I hope that was true, because in an interview in 2008, Gary said about his son, "He was conceived while I was shooting that film.
Okay.
And we would call him Kenshiro while he was in the belly as a joke. Then when he was born, I hadn't really thought of any other name."
Well, okay.
So it's stuck.
That's deflated.
I'm so sorry, Kumar.
Oh my.
I stuck a pin in that. Speaking of Gary Daniels, I read an article about him called Britain's Original Martial Arts Action Hero.
Okay.
This was on flickeringmyth.com, and there's a couple of lines in this article that I really like. It says that throughout the 90s, in particular, Gary Daniels was a standout in the action hero world below the Jean-Claude Van Damme tier,
Yep.
where companies like PM Entertainment were blasting out action films for the home video or HBO market. Like many of those stars that came with the rising tide of VHS, Daniels was to be the next insert popular action hero of the time. Cannon was pushing Michael Dudikoff. Roger Corman was backing Don the Dragon Wilson.
Yes. Yep.
But who was the most successful of these three? I don't know.
Well, I'd say Dudikoff, because Cannon just kept putting him in movie after movie, in a sense. So he had an oeuvre, I'd say. Don the Dragon Wilson was in a lot of stuff too, but less visible because it wasn't canon, I'd say. Yeah.
Right.
Gary Daniels was certainly the one I knew least about. And I often know about these because my older brother, I probably mentioned this before, was a martial arts movie junkie, and he knew all these guys.
Yeah.
And he would watch a movie like this, and you'd ask him about it later, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's got these good kicks in it in this scene. Watch this scene for these kicks." And I'd be like, "Okay." And I'd watch the movie, unwatchable.
But it did have some cool kicks.
But it had those kicks in that scene that he remembered, and he's like, "Yeah, I just remembered that."
Well, much like your brother, the authors of this article have a great deal of nostalgia for the old school martial arts films and stars of old. As they put it, a time before CGI and crash course training when the star was a legitimate badass.
Yeah.
Gary Daniels might not be able to act, but he could certainly kick all our asses.
Yes, absolutely, no doubt about that. Yeah.
That's pretty much it for trivia for me.
Okay, so we'll do our ratings.
Yes.
Now, how much of the comic did you reread? I read up to volume 5 this time.
Wow. I reread volumes 1 and 2.
Okay.
Volume 1, I think, is all you really needed to reread for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were a bit lukewarm on Fist and Rust a year ago.
That's right.
Did you feel the same way?
No, I've come around.
Okay.
I deride the opinion of a year ago, where I was talking about how I was getting bored with the. I talked a lot in that about the repetitiveness and the boredom. No, I don't think that anymore. I think this comic is just rad to the max.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do really dig it, and I'm looking forward to. Also, I realized I've been reading Berserk, and we're going to do a whole series on it in Deconstructing Comics. I think we're going to do all of the volumes, but I kind of started to see how much influence this has had on other like popular manga like that one that have come since as well.
Shout out to my younger brother who has a Berserk tattoo.
Really?
The brand of suffering.
Whoa! That is wild. I enjoyed it just as much this time, and I'm still writing notes about stuff like at one point Bat says poor girl seeing her old man's head flying off or something like that, and I was just like, whoa, what a thing to say. But I was picking up more plot holes and stuff and just digging all that stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just the most over the top adolescent wonder world.
Yeah.
Wonderland.
Yeah.
Where you can make a man garrot himself.
Yes.
You can tap a guy's arm so that he has enough strength to work, but not enough to bully.
Yes. You can have a little man in big fake man technique.
You can have big feelings, but you never have to show them.
Yep.
And you sure as heck don't have to kiss any girls.
Yep. How do you feel about this movie? I think it's pretty clear.
This is an A.
This is a big nay.
This movie's a mess and I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. I do think Gary Daniels, despite not being a Japanese dude, kind of looks the part almost every time you see him on screen. The brooding and the hair and the jacket and the muscles and everything. But that's not enough to...
I just remembered something.
Okay.
Apparently on set, his nickname was Condom Man.
Oh, because that's how they did the scars with condoms?
Apparently.
Right.
But I will add to that, it was a brave person who called him Condom Man, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I would take that anecdote with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But they do kind of look like condoms, these scars.
Yes, they used condoms for the big chap in Alien as well, and the jaw, somehow something about the motion of the jaw, they used condoms.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so adaptation, this is a nay for me.
Absolutely a nay for me.
They've missed the point of the violence and the Kenshiro's personality and the mythology of Hokuto Shigen, which doesn't make sense in the comic, but still has a kind of orderliness to it, or there's a sense to it.
Yeah, it makes enough sense for the story to make sense.
Yeah.
This one, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. They can't even get... they care so little about what's important to someone that reads the manga that they change Southern Cross to an upside-down crucifix. Like, I still can't get over that they did that. It's like when they made the Enemy Mine film and they put a mine in it because the name of the book they based it on was Enemy Mine.
Right.
And the producers said, but where's the mine?
Yeah.
Southern Cross. Yeah, doesn't that mean upside-down crucifix?
Yeah.
I hate this movie. It's terrible adaptation.
Yeah.
Never watch it unless you're drunk.
Okay. Okay, so... Oh, I should go over all our promotional stuff.
Yes. Make sure to
Like, subscribe,
yes,
rate, and review.
That's it.
And please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, no spaces. And you get no rewards for pitching in, but we need the help.
Absolutely. We could have bought the DVD and listened to Gary Daniels' DVD commentary.
Could have been better.
So
it could have been a better episode if we'd had a few more bucks in the Patreon.
You never know.
Was there something? We're on Facebook.
Visit our Facebook page because I'm deafening Kumar every week with all of my memes, and come in and see the cool comparison between the art in this film and the original paintings and posters that I went to all the trouble of looking up online.
Yep. And we can be reached by email. I think the email's in the show notes. But we're not on Discord or
Instagram.
We're not on Instagram.
We're not on any of the things the kids are on.
No.
We're Facebook men.
Yeah. Yeah, middle-aged Facebook man. Okay, so next week we are going to talk about The Perils of Gwendoline in the Land of the Yik Yak.
Not Safe for Work.
Not Safe for Work, starring Tawny Katane from 1984. It's a bondage comic. There's actually, I think, no nudity in it, maybe?
There definitely is nudity in it.
Okay.
But it's pretty tame. I think it's just the above the waist.
Okay. So this is real comic book movie Oblivion Land. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's 1984, directed by a French director who directed the first Emmanuel movie and the story of, his name, as far as I can tell, is just Jackin. I don't know if that's...
Jackin? How opposite.
Really is, talk about nominative determinism. As far as I can tell, his name is just Jackin. And he directed Emmanuel and this bondage comic into a movie.
Brilliant. Can't wait.